I would like to begin today with a story that happened about 50 years ago. My teacher, Irina Tweedy, was in India, and after her teacher died, she needed to be alone. So she went to the Gandhi ashram in the foothills of the Himalayas. And she was given a little cottage to stay in on a hill just outside the ashram. And there was this steep valley of pine trees that went down to where the ashram was. And she was there for some months in silence. And one morning, she opened the door of her little cottage, and there on the doorstep was a piece of paper. And she opened this piece of paper, and it was some writing in Sanskrit. And she couldn't read Sanskrit, so she tossed the piece of paper over the edge of the hill, and it floated down to the pine trees. And she went to the ashram and did some shopping, and later in the day she came back, and there on her doorstep was this little piece of paper again. So she thought that it must have some significance, so she took it to the Swami in the ashram, and he translated it. Lord of the universe, Prabhu Sovereign Spirit, beneficent and merciful Allah, at thy command only will I carry out the pilgrimage of life, for the love of all created by thee, and for thy glory. And she made this into a personal prayer for herself. And in recent years, part of my work, in a way, has been to recover certain things that I feel have been lost. It's like seeds, to recover certain seeds that I feel are important to our spiritual well-being, our spiritual understanding, and of course our spiritual journey in the West, both individually and also collectively. Because I have a sense that we have lost or misunderstood certain key aspects of spiritual life. And in particular, when certain spiritual traditions came from the East to the West in the 70s, whether from India, the Middle East, or from Japan, that they brought with them a deep wisdom and certain spiritual techniques, such as meditation, that have become central to many people's spiritual practice, but a key ingredient or element was often missing, or it just hadn't, I think the phrase is lost in translation. And as many of you know, for example, I feel that we have personalized the spiritual journey in a way that was never intended. That many people approach spiritual life from, for example, discovering their soul's destiny, or discovering a deep meaning for life. And although spiritual life can give you both a sense of your own destiny or a deep meaning or fulfillment, in my understanding, that was never the original intention. In fact, in Sufism we say, take one step away from yourself and behold the path. And the moment we approach spiritual life, it's from a point of view of what can I get out of it, or how can it give me something, even how can it give me meaning or fulfillment or a sense of my destiny, we lose something essential, something got lost in translation. And I feel this very strongly, that the spiritual journey is not about us. And one of the things in this little prayer, which is, at thy command only will I carry out the pilgrimage of life, for the love of all created by thee and for thy glory, is nowhere does it mention my spiritual journey. It is really about the divine. It's something very simple, but for me very essential, that got lost in translation. We made it about us. And it's as if you lose that essential note, then something is missing, something primal. A particular note is not heard, a particular resonance is not lived, both for oneself and also for the bigger community. And there is another note which I also feel strongly has been lost in translation. And that's really what I want to talk about today, which has to do with oneness and also has to do with the bigger picture of spirituality. And it is in the first phrase in this line, "At thy command only will I carry out the pilgrimage of life, for love of all created by thee." It's very simple. I am here for the love of all created by thee. Or as Joanna Macy puts it so beautifully, just for love of the earth. And this shouldn't be something new. Again, it's something that I feel got lost in translation. That we are here for love of all created by thee. And I was wondering, why did we lose it? Why did we forget about it? In today's image of the spiritual journey, this is very rarely at the forefront. What happened when all these traditions came to the West? I understand in Christianity that I don't think it's in Christ's teachings. There was this shadow put over the physical world, and this whole image of the sins of the flesh, and this rejection of the physical. In my understanding, it's a shadow that came afterwards, and then this became this rejection of this beautiful world. God is in heaven, and the earth is a place of sin and suffering. And then there were these other traditions that came to the West and brought with a certain freshness, a certain different quality of spiritual life. And one of the first traditions that touched me was Zen Buddhism. And when I was 16, I became very immersed in Zen Buddhism. It really awoke me actually to the beauty of the physical world as much as to inner states of meditation. And yet, when you think of Zen Buddhism and you have this image of the monk in meditation in the Zendo, something again is missing. And I did a little bit of research about this, and what I discovered was in Japan, almost everybody in Japan, at least 80% or more, is Shinto. And that's never been a problem. In fact, Buddhism in Japan became integrated into the Shinto. Shinto is not really a religion. It is more an understanding. And so woven into the whole texture of Zen Buddhism in Japan is Shinto. And I don't understand a lot about Shinto, but it is about the Shinto gods, which are called kami. And they are sacred spirits which take the form of things and concepts important to life, such as wind, rain, mountains, trees, rivers, and fertility. Kami and people are not separate. They exist within the same world and share its interrelated complexity. So in the Zen Buddhist consciousness, there is also a whole world of embodied spirits. It's an animate world in which they live, in which the mountains, the rivers, the trees, places are embodied by kami, by spirits. The world is spiritually alive. And everything is full, permeated with this spiritual presence in the physical world in which they live. The spiritual world and the physical world never became separated, as happened in the West. And this is very, very, very important. And yet, when Zen Buddhism came to the West, this got lost in translation. Because when we think of Zen Buddhism, we're not aware of a whole animate world in which the Zen monk lived, of this whole spiritually embodied universe in which everything in nature, everything in people, all the sacred places were embodiments of kami, of spirits. Somehow that got left aside, so we inherited a certain wonderful practices in meditation, and I've done them. They're very clear, very simple, very beautiful. But we lost the world in which they belonged. And so something became sterile that should never have been sterile. And of course, anybody who studied Tibetan Buddhism is very bound up with shamanism, with the whole spirit world, that some of which is very place-specific. You think of the deities in the mountains in Tibet that were worshipped, that were part of that whole rich culture of sacred place and spiritual place and deities that embodied place, as well as the deep meditation practices of Tibetan Buddhism. And I'm not an expert in Tibetan Buddhism, but I have a sense that a lot of that embodied world got lost when it came to the West. There were Tibetan Buddhist practices, but not an understanding of the spiritual world and the spirit world and the world of deities and the earth magic that was central to Tibetan Buddhism in Tibet. A lot of that earth magic got lost. And so again, something essential got lost in translation. And the third example I will give because it has to do with Ramana Maharshi. And Ramana Maharshi, in his wonderful teachings of non-duality, have become quite popular recently in what's called Neo-Advaita, or non-dual teachings. And they have to do with self-inquiry. It's a very good spiritual practice. What am I not? Looking at yourself very clearly, this whole business of self-inquiry. And yet again, when I went to look more deeply at Ramana Maharshi, I also saw that something was lost. A lot of the non-dual teachings say you don't need a guru. You awaken spontaneously. And yet if you read Ramana Maharshi's teachings, he did have a guru. And in fact, his whole life was spent in the presence of his guru. And he never moved away from his guru. And his guru was Arunachala, the sacred mountain. Arunachala is truly the holy place. Of all holy places, it is the most sacred. Know that it is the heart of the world. It is truly Shiva himself. It is his heart abode. In that place the Lord ever abides, the hill of light named Arunachala. So there again the earth is very present in his spiritual awakening, in his spiritual practice, and he actually wrote a whole series of hymns in which he referred to the sacred mountain as his guru. And what is interesting actually is, from ancient times, various spiritual centers in India have represented various paths and modes of doctrine. And Arunachala, among them the doctrine of Advaita and the path of self-inquiry. Although the ultimate doctrine and supreme and most direct path, this through the ages has not been most popular, because for most people it seemed too austere and difficult. The Maharishi attained realization through a spontaneous act of self-inquiry with no human guru. The Maharishi agreed with all other masters that a guru is necessary, adding, however, that the guru need not necessarily take human form. When he left home as a youth, Arunachala drew him like a powerful magnet. He went straight there and stayed there for the rest of his life. It was Arunachala that he regarded as his guru. And somehow we have to reclaim this note that has got lost. It is present in all of these Eastern traditions in different ways. Whether Ramana Maharshi just sitting in the sacred mountain where he spent his life, his realization was deeply grounded in the earth, in sacred place. In the same way as for the Zen monk, his realization or his practice was part of an animate world in which everything was alive with spirit, with kami. Now there's a particular difficulty here in this country. There are two aspects of it. First of all, there is this Puritan heritage that was somehow became very divorced from the spirit world. I won't go into it now, but the Puritan Christianity does not allow much of the spirit world to become present. Roman Catholic tradition opens the door to more of the world of saints, of the world of the inner world, with ritual, with symbolic practice. And then there is the other tragedy that happened here that I think will take still many, many generations to unravel, and that is the holders of sacred place in this country were systematically and brutally killed off in this terrible act of genocide when the white people killed the Native Americans. And the Native Americans held the sacred meaning of place and the spiritual relationship to place. And there was this terrible act of systematic genocide that took place in this country, which the spiritual scars of which are not really understood. But if you destroy all the wisdom keepers of sacred place, and you then try to have real spiritual practice, you hit this place of deep pain and deep suffering and deep rejection. And one has to acknowledge that if one's going to do real spiritual practice in this country that is grounded, that includes the earth. So I go back to this prayer that Mrs. Tweedy was given. At thy command only will I carry out the pilgrimage of life, for the love of all created by thee and for thy glory. We are here for the glory of God. The Sufis say this very simply. There was this moment outside of time, it's called the primordial covenant, when God spoke to the souls of the not yet created humanity and said, am I not your Lord? And they said, yes, we witness it. And there is this deep pledge from the very core of the soul of humanity to witness, to remember that he is Lord or Goddess. It doesn't matter, the gender is irrelevant. And we are here to witness that one being. And that is, in a way, a primary spiritual practice in Sufism. Whether you call it remembrance or witnessing, this incredible one being that we are surrounded by, that we are part of, that we live and breathe, that we exist within. It is one living being that is the one. The Sufis talk about the unity of being. It is in our breath, it's in everything we are. And there is a very, very important, very foundational spiritual practice to turn towards the one in this oneness. And that takes us home. That reconnects us with the source of all life. It's very simple. My teacher used to say, mystics teach simple things, but those simple things change people's lives. It's not complicated, everything is one. And it is a simple spiritual practice, wonderful practice. It's like Brother Lawrence's practice of the presence of God. To see the One, to see the Creator in everything around you. Wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God. It's not about us, it's about God. It's about turning back to the divine, turning back to what is sacred, reclaiming this connection that is at the root of the root of the root of everything, that nourishes us, that makes us truly alive, that makes us truly human beings. For thy glory, the world is charged with the grandeur of God. That's the English mystical poet Gerald Manley Hopkins, who was also a priest. And to live that from the core of your being, to live that recognition, that was always part of every other culture. I always say we're the only culture to have forgotten it. This simple connection to what is sacred, to what is one, to what is... And then for the love of all created by thee. Again, it's very simple. And somehow we have forgotten it. We have... I was thinking this morning, I went for an early morning walk before I left to drive here. It was very early. Sun was just coming up, and I was walking, listening to the birds and seeing the blossoms on the tree, and there on a telephone wire there was a young falcon whose feathers were still downy. You know, that beautiful downiness of the of young birds. He wasn't a baby anymore, but he was sitting alone, kind of proudly alone, and he didn't mind me walking underneath. He wasn't frightened. And then a little bit later he spread his wings and flew away, and I thought, this is this wonder of everything created by thee. And we are part of it. And we are part of this incredible celebration. And it should be foundational in our spiritual practice. It should be the root. It connects us. I always like to go for a walk early in the morning because it reminds me, it connects me. You know, we so easily get lost in our thoughts, in all the stuff that goes round and round, and it becomes more with computers and all of that. And this bizarre world we live in, that we have forgotten what is essentially. I was thinking also, my great passion this year is growing potatoes. For some reason I thought I hadn't done it before. I thought I was too involved in writing spiritual books or leading a spiritual life that I hadn't realized, you know, the simple wonder of growing potatoes. And you put your hands in the earth and you discover a great round potato, and you pull it out, and it's a meal in itself, and it's like, and you know, there have been cultures that just lived off that. And it's something so simple, and it provides a balance, it provides a root, and it's profoundly spiritual. And I think, again, it's a really important balance to this. Again, I say this bizarre world we live in, this civilization that's running on empty, faster and faster and faster. It's like those cartoon characters. I don't know if you remember, you used to see Bugs Bunny, and in those cartoon characters, they'd run to the end of the cliff, and they'd run over the end of the cliff, and their feet would be going round and round like this for a few minutes till they realized that they were over the edge, and then they fell and crashed. And I think that, for me, that's a perfect image of our present culture, where we've run over the edge. You know, we've passed the point of no return, what they call the tipping point, and we're right over, and we're still going round and round very, very fast because we haven't quite realized there's no ground under our feet, and you know, it amazes me that this culture can continue running on empty for so long. At what point the crash will happen? And those of us who have a little bit of awareness, and hopefully our spiritual practice has given us a little bit of awareness, can, you know, grab a root on the edge of the cliff and pull ourselves back and say, There must be another way to live that is rooted in something real. And that's why I said something has driven me in the past few years to find what we have lost, to find these essential ingredients that we seem to have dismissed. And I say one, for me, very simple to do with spiritual life is it's not about us. And that's something so essential. And yet, the fact that it's about God, the fact that it's about the divine, the fact that it's about what is sacred, that you only begin spiritual life because, well, the Sufis say, because the beloved looks into your heart and gives you a glance of divine love. You only turn towards God because God has turned towards you. None of you would be here otherwise if the beloved hadn't looked into your heart. It wouldn't interest you. If you were in the rest of the world, you'd be watching soccer now. I'm not quite sure what Americans do when the rest of the world watches the World Cup, but you certainly wouldn't be in a public gathering. If you were in England, you'd be in a pub watching the English squad, in the Amazon jungle, not knowing what to do because it's so humid and hot there. If you were in Spain, you'd be in despair today because they lost 5-1 to the Netherlands, and it's never happened like that before since 1950, and your life would be over. But here you are because something has touched your heart, because there has been a call, and this is the echo, the call and the echo. This is the response. And it's all because of the beloved. There is no other reason that you turn towards God. And yet, how quickly we forget that. How quickly we practice spiritual life for the sake of meaning, for the sake of purpose, for the sake of something deeper. And yes, these are all valid secondary reasons. But the first reason has to be for the sake of the beloved. Because the beloved called you, because the beloved wants you, because he loves you, or she loves you, or it loves you, or love loves you. There is no other reason. Something so simple. And how often do you hear it? How often do you hear people exploring spiritual life for 10,000 other reasons, but not the glory of God? Because your heart has been touched. And there is this innermost touching, this intimate innermost touching that in whatever way the beloved wants your soul to remember. And then there is living it in the outer world. And the Sufis have this saying, outwardly to be with the people, inwardly to be with God. It's a Naqshbandi saying, actually. Solitude in the crowd, outwardly to be with the people, inwardly to be with God. And combined with this call of the divine, there is at this time the call of the earth. And the earth is calling. The earth needs our attention. The earth needs our remembrance because the earth is dying. It's very simple. Again, these are not complicated ideas. We have forgotten for the love of all created by thee. We have forgotten what was well known and understood in the East for thousands of years, that in our spiritual practice, every leaf, every bud, every butterfly, even every mosquito is also included. The most famous Zen poem of all time by Basho, "The old pond, a frog jumps in, plop." That is enlightenment. That is the pond. That is the frog. That is life. That is where we are. This is the world into which the soul has incarnated. That's one of the reasons I like meeting here in the Mercy Center, because in the break you can go and you can feel the gardens that are tended with love and care. You don't need much to remember. Just one bud breaking open in springtime, this falcon with his downy feathers before he took flight, reminding me of this. And I always find it interesting, because when I go for my walk, there are the thoughts of the day, and they, even first thing in the morning, they're there. They're wanting to come in. And then nature is present, and it reminds me again of something else that's not about me, that's about the glory of God. And the earth needs it. The earth needs our prayers. This was always understood. Again, I go back that something has driven me to find these kind of key ingredients that were always understood that we have forgotten. It's like the salt you need for cooking to flavor your practice, to make it taste. And so the first one is it's not about us, it's about God, it's about the beloved, it's about the heart. And then this other ingredient, that our practice should include oneness. The Sufis talk about the unity of being. Wheresoever you turn, there is the face of God. The out-breathing. And it is in everything. If it's not in everything, then it's not one. Then it's not the God that I know. And we have enough gods with sectarian divides, and your God and my God and all of that. But as mystics, as seekers, we've been asked to seek a different truth that is about one, that includes everything. And there is this calling from the soul of the earth, this cry that it has been forgotten. It has been forgotten. It needs us to remember that it is sacred. It is like a primary contribution. Yes, some people are called to action, to try to halt this crazy ecocide that, as a culture, we are perpetuating. It's bizarre. It is. If you think of it logically, it has been described like somebody is completely pathological. What we are doing. I don't want to go into that now. Too distressing. It breaks your heart. But there is this inner calling to respond again, just by remembering. Just to remember. Real spiritual practices are very simple and incredibly important, because then we make this connection. It's all about connection. In fact, in St. Teresa's stages of prayer, she says the first stage is more difficult because you have to make a connection with your higher self or with God that sticks. That is the most difficult. That requires the most effort. Once you've made that connection, then the grace comes, then the gifts come, then it starts to spin. We have to make a connection with the divine within our consciousness. Takes usually, if you're really serious, takes like 5 or 6 years to make that connection so nothing can break it. So that it's your lifeline, it's your, like the underwater diver, it's the bit that gives you air. It's what sustains you, this connection. Wherever you go, you have this connection to what is real, to what loves you beyond measure, and what eventually takes you home. And that is where the effort is required, to do your practices, to do your prayers, to do your meditation, to work on yourself. So this connection can't be broken. And then it's very beautiful, because really, more and more it does the work. In fact, in St. Teresa's stages of prayer, she says that uses the image of the gardener watering the garden. And the first stage, he has to go to the well and take the water out of the well and take it to the garden and water the garden. And in the last stage, it just rains. It's just the grace of God. And you have to have this connection to be open to the grace of God, so it can be given. And God gives, and the beloved is so generous. One thing that often saddens me about people is how little they allow themselves to be given. There's this wonderful line from the Song of Songs, and he brought me to his banqueting house, and his banner over me was love. And there's this banqueting house of love. And I often feel sadly people are satisfied with just a few crumbs from the table of love. They don't want too much, I guess, in case it disturbs their lives. And the beloved is so generous. He just wants to give and give and give. Sometimes troubles, yes, but you can't discriminate. And that is also reflected in this world, the incredible generosity of nature. I just plant one little seed potato and out come these meals. And there's this generosity. I always feel in this culture, everybody works too hard. It's this Puritan work ethic. It's so tedious. And it's not meant to be like that. In fact, the future I've been shown, once I was given a whole series of visions for the future of humanity, and there wasn't so much effort involved. It's something about oneness, actually. If you really work with oneness, it's much less effort. All this duality is so exhausting. You and me, and you want and I want, and who wants more, and you're supposed to be ambitious and to want more than somebody else wants, and it's really hard work. It was something my father said to me, actually, when I was like 17. He didn't understand why I wasn't ambitious. And he said, it must be because you're vegetarian. He had a good, simple understanding of life. If you don't eat meat, you're not going to go for it. But there's a different way to live. There's a different way to be. There's a different rhythm. There's a different song. There is this song in life. We are here. We are part of it all. And we are part, the moment you eat your Wheaties in the morning, you are part of it. They've been grown. A seed has given it from the earth to your plate. You are part of it. And of course you should give thanks. This is the most natural human way. And what we don't understand, because that's a whole other story, that the earth responds when we give thanks. We've forgotten that the earth is alive. We've forgotten the earth has ears. We've forgotten the earth has a heart. We've forgotten the earth needs our prayer, needs our praise, needs our thanks. Just like anybody else. We're not separate from it, we're part of it. And our spiritual journey is a celebration of that. I love this English mystical poet, Hopkins, and he has this one line, glory be to God for dapple things, for skies of copper color as a brinded cow. He goes on and on, glory be to God. Praise. It's very immediate. Thank you, beloved. So it is really a simple way of reclaiming, remembering this prayer for the love of all created by thee. We are here to love everything. That's again, there are two Buddhists, interestingly, whose message I really, really like at this time. And one is Joanna Macy, who's often here in the Mercy Center. And she's really been on the front lines of the environmental movement, also the movement against nuclear. And when asked about saving the earth, she says, yes, we have to be aware of what is happening and deal with the grief of what is happening. But really it is our love for the earth that will save the earth. And there's also the wonderful Zen teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, who says we need to fall in love with the earth. And only then can the ecological crisis be redeemed. We need to fall back in love with the earth. And you know, I am a Sufi, and Sufis are about love. And so we should know about love, because what else is there that nourishes us? And if it nourishes us, it nourishes the earth. What else is there that really touches our soul? It is love. And love has really personally been the great ingredient of my life's journey, because of the fact I was brought up in a family that didn't know about love. Love was never mentioned looking back. It's like nobody asked me how did I feel, and love was never mentioned. And I didn't really know that love existed until I met the Sufis. And I have been given many, many extraordinary experiences of love over the years. Unbelievable. I mean, to feel every cell in your body loved, even right down onto the physical plane. And then that was in my 20s, and then later to be taken into a whole other dimension that is just complete love, in which the love is, that's all there is, and it's this ocean of love, or sea of love, or I don't know how to describe it, because there are very few words, and I have really, my eyes or my heart has been opened to love in a way that I never believed possible. When I began my spiritual practice in my teens, I believed that spirituality was about austerity, and about being ascetic, and about discipline, and about really rigorous meditation. And yes, those are stepping stones on the path. You need self-discipline, you need to meditate, you need to have a certain austerity, but love is something completely different. Love is like the whole larder just full of abundance. It's like a harvest garden. It permeates everything. It is incredibly, it is sweet, it is tender, it is destructive, it does everything you want to you and all sorts of things you don't want to you, and it breaks your heart and puts your heart back together, and it is just unbelievable. And it's really what there is underneath everything. There is this heartbeat of love. There is this, it is, that's why I always say that when you get, just get to the other side and you look back at your life, to be able to say, I have done two things. I have lived and I have loved. And then I think it's okay to go, because, this world gives you an opportunity to live, to breathe, to live, to experience, to give yourself, whatever it is, even if it's not successful. Success and failure are what Kipling says, and treat those two imposters just the same, success and failure. We are too caught up in success and failure, and often we don't know till we get to the other side what is real success and what is real failure. But you can just give yourself to the experiences that life brings you. And yes, it's a wild ride. It's not an easy ride. It's like sometimes out of control ride, but it's a ride. And to have loved. I remember once saying to my teacher about love, and I didn't realize that. I said, can your love increase? And she said, and how? You can actually there comes a time in your practice you can actually learn how to give love consciously. You take it out of, somehow we have caught, again, everything in our culture has become very personalized, and love has become very personalized, and so love is about whether you're loved by your parents or something you work out at your therapist, or it's all to do with personal relations. And I think that's okay when you're in your 20s and you're in love and, you know, all the craziness of that. But it's like saying a little pond is the whole ocean. And love is much vaster than the personal. It's much bigger than people. It includes everything. You are that lovely line from Auden, you are my sun, my moon, and all my stars. It's everything. And we have to take it back to everything because we've forgotten that it's everything. We've forgotten, for the love of all created by thee and for thy glory, we've forgotten this great explosion of love, which is what we call life, which is what we call creation. The Sufis say that God said, he who was one and alone, and he wanted to be loved, and so he created the world. And this world is an expression of love that gives itself back to God. And we are part of it. And we live this kind of blinkered life that say, oh, life is about succeeding, or even succeeding spiritually. And I've failed enough times spiritually to know that it has nothing to do with succeeding. And it's really about loving. It's very simple. It's about the heart. It's about this center of the heart, and it's not personal. You don't work it out in a therapist's office, because the heart isn't like that. And that's why once you have begun the journey, as I said, once you have drunk just one sip of the wine of divine love, which is what the Sufis say, that's when the journey begins. You make the mistake of drinking just one sip of the wine of divine love. And then you begin this journey of love. And this journey that includes everything, because everything is in the end about love. If you dare, if you're prepared to, it's so vast. And everything in creation. When I saw this morning, say, this young falcon with these downy feathers, and I just thought, oh beloved, you have created this beautiful bird out of so much love. And then we are part of it as it's meant to be. We are living the life that is actually around us. And even if you live in a city, there is still a flower somewhere, there is still a breeze somewhere, hopefully. You still eat food that has been created out of love. Not when it got to the factory, but before then. Because it's the beloved's expression of love. That's what this world is, and it's one of its most essential notes. And we are this link of love. Human beings have this privilege that their hearts can open. It is a privilege to be a human being, and your heart can be opened, your heart can be touched by divine love. And then you can be this connection between the Creator and the creation. This is and to me, that's what it means to be a guardian of the planet, to look after creation, to be this connection that is infused with love, that remembers the divine nature of everything. And it's a very simple practice. Sufis call it remembrance. To remember the love that is in everything. And yes, you can take it out of if you're a guy, out of your mother complex and give it to the great mother and have a great mother complex. And then it's all about creation. It's all about everything. And then something in you becomes aligned. You see, really, As a spiritual teacher, I don't do very much, but one of the few things I do is just try to align people. Try to align them with their higher self. Try to align them with what is true. It's like, I have a very good chiropractor I like, and I go there once a month because he realigns me. Before I used to only go to him when I got in real pain, when I'd been gardening and dug something up and my back started to scream, and then I used to ring and say, ah! and then I discovered it's much more efficient to go there once a month. I get a haircut. I live quite a way, so once a month I go to the chiropractor and get a haircut. They just live down the street from each other. So I see Joe, my barber, and I go to the chiropractor. And he just aligns me so that I stay aligned, and so nothing too bad happens. And so I can deal with the rough and tumble of stress and all of that without getting into agony. And somehow, as a spiritual teacher, I always feel my job is just to keep people aligned, just to align them. They're all their spiritual centers. So you can live then your real purpose, not this wacky, distorted purpose. We live in a weird world. Half the country doesn't even believe that global warming is taking place. I mean, it's like being in the Flat Earth Society. It's bizarre. There is no logic, there is no reason, there is no rationale to this, systematic, anyway. It's pathological. And just try to remember a few essential ingredients. That's why, again, that's why I love this little piece of paper that was on front of Mrs. Tweedy's door, high up in the Himalayas. Lord of the universe, Prabhu, sovereign spirit, beneficent and merciful Allah, my infinite one. And there comes a time on the journey when it doesn't matter what name the beloved has. You can't name it. There is no name for this intimate, extraordinary experience within your heart. All the names, no name, just for the Sufis, he, she, it is our beloved. Oh, but there are names. Lord of the universe, Prabhu, sovereign spirit, beneficent and merciful Allah, my infinite one. I love the last bit, my infinite one. At thy command only will I carry out the pilgrimage of life. And that means you begin with this alignment. Like the chiropractor, you are aligned with the highest purpose. You are here at the command of God, at the will of God. Otherwise you wouldn't be here if he hadn't willed it so. And you remember that. It is very simple. At thy command only will I carry out the pilgrimage. Not for any other reason. At thy command only will I carry out the pilgrimage of life. For the love of all created by thee, and for thy glory. For the love of everything, every person, every butterfly, everything. For the love of he has created, what he has created. How many species we are destroying every year? Is it like 40,000 or something? Unbelievable. And he has created it all. And for thy glory. If it's not for the glory of God, what is the point of living? Why live for yourself? I mean, what do you get? It's like, I don't know. Guess you just get yourself back. I have no idea what it means to live for yourself, but really boring. But to live for the love of all created by thee and for the glory of God, for thy glory. Beloved, for thy glory. That is a life. That is how life is meant to be. That is how life was always meant to be. These are these central ingredients in life. The simple. That is the real dignity of a human being, the real dignity of a human being that bows down before God and experiences this world that the Creator has created, of which we are a part, and celebrates it. Yes, it's hard work, it's difficult, and there are tears, and there are backaches, and there are all sorts. And that matters, and it doesn't matter, because really it is about something else. It is about the glory of God. And we are the glory of God. If we incarnate that, if we live it, if we allow this spiritual awakening to take root and to be lived in relationship to the earth. If it's not lived in the relationship to the earth, it's only half of it. You can only look towards heaven if you also look to the earth, as above, so below. That's a basic Hermetic teaching. It's a basic alchemical teaching. There has to be both. There has to be the creation and the creator. There has to be the soil and the flower. That's the thing about potatoes. You just need really good composted soil. Then you get these great potatoes. I say, this is my passion this year. So friends, we have a little break.